Salute 52, Landmarks, and Enigma Quest Escape Arcade. This is staying in. Over the last couple of days, I've realised that I don't like Merlot.
You don't like Merlot?
No, I've decided it's a red wine, Sam. Merlot. It's And I've decided I don't like it. I've been going through buying these little bottles. You can get little small bottles of
train
wine.
bottles.
You can get big bottles and you can get small bottles now of wine.
The kind of size bottle that you take on a train.
That you'd take on a train, yeah. Like they're about 180 mils, and they're a teeny tiny thing, and they're just a small one. And I've been using them to kind of find out, like, what wines do I like? And I've discovered that I don't like Merlots, which is fine, I guess. But
now you know.
And now I know. Now I'm Merlot, and and. So I guess the reason I'm bringing this up is this is the announcement from me that that's where I'm at in my life, that I'm making.
You're into
I now
wines
have
now.
I now have an opinion on Merlot.
So I'm just trying to think: is how much is this going to dominate your life?
No, it won't.
Compared to
no, I promise, Sam. This isn't. I can't make this like an obsession, right? Because first of all, there's something really lovely about the transitory nature of food and drink. And I know that if I got way into something, I'd be like, well, I want to have the rarest bottle in the world, right? And but I also know that if I bought that, I'd be like, well, I can't drink it, right? And for me, that is part of that enjoyment. That's why beer is so good, right? Because it's very rare that you save bottles of beer. Like, very, very rare that you would do that. And even then, you go, oh, well, I'll have that in a year or two. But, like, wine is one of those things where it's like, oh, I've got a 20-year-old bottle of whatever it is. I can't do that. But what I do want to do is I do want to be that, I was going to say a horrible phrase, but just the guy who's in the restaurant and says, Should we have a Merlot? Should we have a Merlot? And actually have an opinion on that, right? I'd like to be that person who can, and then everybody else can go, and pretend like they know what they're talking about with wine. And then I can secretly sit there and go, I vaguely know what I'm talking about.
Okay, so you don't want to reach sommelier status.
No.
You want one rung below.
I've made my peace with the idea that I won't be a sommelier now, in the same way that I won't be an astronaut. So that's I'm just saying that it turns out that 39 is when you get to the age where you have an opinion on what kind of red wine you're drinking.
I want to see how far this is going to go. So you've got an opinion on different types of wine. Fine. I've got an opinion on different types of brands of Dr. Pepper.
Sure.
We all run in our own in our own lanes.
Yeah, we know.
Do you think
you know that you're a Hellman's man, not a Heinz man?
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely. Here we go. Do you think you'll ever have an opinion on a year?
So that's the thing. I think I will go, oh, broadly, that was a good year for wine. but not that was a good year for this wine, right?
Okay.
So I think I can broadly understand that. Will be able to at some point understand that stuff, but I don't think I'll be able to be the person who's like, this very specific, maker of wine had a very good year in this period of time. Flash forward to like 10 years when I'm, I'm a waiter now. I'm a waiter in a restaurant.
You're alone, but you've got a cellar.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got a cellar and I'm slowly going through it. Yeah. So no, I'm assuming, I don't think it'll become an obsession. I don't think so. What have you become obsessed with recently? Is there anything where you've gone, I didn't think that would be a thing for me?
Good question. I definitely think that one of the routes you take when you first become vegetarian is that you try and find your thing. You try and find the analog of that thing that you really enjoyed when you loved scoffing the meat.
Yeah, yeah.
And for me, it was always, right, what is going to be the best burger? So for a short while, my wife and I did get slightly obsessed with discovering the best burgers, like vegetarian burgers. Because so to the point where we've got a bit of a ranking. We know I could probably quite confidently identify different vegetarian burgers just by taste and sight alone.
Do you think so? You could say, well, this is a Linda, this is a Beyond, this is a Corn.
Yeah,
you reckon you could do that?
Yeah, I think I could pretty confidently.
Okay, so this is good, and you've got the ranking.
Yeah,
I mean, it feels like you're maybe obsessed slightly more than me. Yeah, I feel like you've really gone there.
Yeah, but it serves a purpose.
Well, I mean, yeah, but so do all of mine, right? They entertain me.
Do they?
Well,
you don't have to drink wine. You do have to eat.
That's true. You know what? That is true. That is very true. You don't have to eat burgers, and you don't have to eat enough. You don't have to eat so many burgers. So obviously, it's not just us dominating the conversation today. It really is just us two.
It just is us two.
It's just us two.
And this is what we're reduced to.
Yeah, we're yeah, exactly. Later on, we'll be telling you the real way to cook tofu. Stay tuned. So we've had quite a lot of outsy and aboutsy. And obviously Dan's not here. One of the so Chris has got a really good excuse. In fact, you know what? Both of them have got a good excuse. Chris out and about, different countries, having a lovely time. I'm sure he'll report back at some point.
Yeah. Chris is on his honeymoon. That's allowed.
It's fine. Dan watching the football.
Mm-hmm.
Which I believe is Aston Villa versus Paris Saint-Germain.
Correct.
Yes. Which is, these are both they're both football teams, and this is it's a big one, right? It's like a big.
It's a big.
They don't normally play each other.
Villa.
Yeah,
they don't normally play each other, and there is a slim chance Aston Villa may win and progress in a tournament.
Okay, that's good. Well, I'm fingers crossed for them. Obviously, you'll be listening to this and you'll know the answer. So they're not here with us today, but we've done quite a lot of hanging out and all that sort of stuff recently, haven't we? We've done quite a bit of.
I think we've gotten together as a foursome
in
real life more often in the last 4 months.
Yeah.
Than I think we probably ever have.
I think the density of it has been high.
Yeah. It's been great.
Yeah.
We've had Civilization.
Yep.
We've had Aircon.
Yep.
And now we've had Dan's quote unquote birthday weekend.
Yep.
In which we went to go and see the football.
Yes, we did.
And we played some games, had a lovely curry. It was the most lads weekend.
It was a very lads weekend, wasn't it? We were talking about this last time. It was extremely laddish. But I think we kept it in check.
Yeah, kept a lid on it. We were fine.
Yep.
What were it was the very first football match you've ever seen.
Yes.
Reflecting on it now.
Yeah.
How do you feel?
It's being in the stadium, which we went to it's not called this anymore, the Ricoh Arena. What's it called now?
Yeah, so it's called the Coventry Building Society Stadium.
Christ.
The CBS Arena.
Okay, CBS. Okay, that rolls off the tongue a little bit better. We went to go see Coventry play the mighty Burnley.
Correct.
Yes,
yeah.
And obviously I didn't understand what was. I mean, I understood what was going on. I understand what football is. I'm not one of these awful people that's just like, I don't know what a goal is. Yes, you do. But I will say it was a real. I found it to be a kind of. It was a real social awakening for me to see how people are in that context. I think seeing football live is seeing the very best and the very worst of humanity over about 90 minutes.
Okay.
So for like very best, Sam, we held a flag, and like there were like 100 other people who also had to hold the flag, and if we didn't all hold the flag, we didn't get to do the thing and cheer the team on. That was amazing. What an incredible like moment of
awesome.
People coming together, right? Like that's a lovely thing to do. And then there was the you said about it before we started watching it. You said that there was like the clack of seats when people like stand up because like the team that you were supporting was about to shoot at the goal, and that was really, really exciting too, and like to be amongst it and to hear like the chants and all that sort of stuff. And obviously I knew that stuff from FIFA and EAFC and all that good stuff of like hearing those chants, but like that was really incredible. And even so, we were supporting Coventry, but just seeing the small amount of Burnley away supporters in their little section of the stadium, seeing how loudly they were singing and like how excited they were to be there, it was like really, really cool. It was like all the really lovely stuff, and obviously seeing these incredible athletes who were doing amazing stuff on the pitch with footballs and all that sort of stuff. That was really, really cool. Flip side of that, still don't understand how violent you can be in this sport, because it just seems like the ref is just making it up as they go along of like, yeah, that's fine, or like, no, you're not allowed to kick him in the head, or it just is unclear for me as to what that is. And I thought the bogs at board game conventions were bad. That is nothing in comparison to stadium football toilets. Let me tell you, that was a real eye-opening moment for me. There was the cheering excitement and camaraderie of everybody, and that was really, really lovely. And then that was juxtaposed so beautifully by the person stood behind the shouting xenophobic comments at some Welsh player, which was like. And then, like, there was also the, like, wonderful moments of, like, we're all part of this Coventry team. Yay, we're all excited. And, like, hearing the announcer be like, and that's one for Coventry, and it was scored by this person. Yay! And then, like, hearing, like, them do exactly the same thing, but for Burnley, and be like, and they've scored another goal. And it was just like, oh, you should be excited for them too. But yeah, it was amazing, and it was lovely, and it was completely unlike what I expected. Like, yeah, it was incredible. How did you find it? Like going with people, because you've seen a couple of sports games
Yeah. I've been to lots of football games. I love them. I think I to take on the role of Chris Darby at this moment, I do find them notoriously theatrical as events.
Yeah, it was very performative, wasn't it? The whole thing.
It's very performative. Everyone, it's almost pantomime-y in terms of, there will always be a villain, there will always be a hero.
Yes.
As a crowd, you kind of know the bits where you get involved and the bits where you don't. So I love football matches in that regard, that it really does feel like for that short time that you are sort of having this incredible shared experience. And obviously it's better if your team are winning and playing well, or you have a strong an identity to rally around. And obviously I think football's definitely got its problems, and all of sport has got its problems, but I think seeing any live sport it's so easy. I get so carried away with watching, with being there and watching live sport. It's just amazing.
Having no skin in the game myself, I did very much get swept up in the like, oh, I really want Coventry to win. Like I really because we were on the Coventry supporters side, and I really did feel like I was like, yes, I hope we do win this one. And it was very exciting when we scored a goal, and it was very disappointing when we didn't. Right. And it was interesting to feel like that, to immediately be like, I'm on your side, even though there's nothing really connecting us other than like we're on the same side of the actual stadium. So we did that. That was lovely. I had a really good time. We played some amazing board games, and one of them that I just I remember we played it at Essen for the first time. We saw a game called Landmarks.
Yes.
And
Yes, we did.
And we played it together like after the curry or whatever it was, or before the curry. And my God, like what a game! Like coming straight off the back of. So I've been playing a load of code names. I've actually had to uninstall it from my phone now because I'm there. Talking about obsessions. This feels, it's like got bits of code names. It's got bits of like exploring a map. It's got bits of social deduction almost, of like trying to understand what it, in the same way that like the mind has social deduction.
Yeah.
My God, what a game.
Yeah, Landmarks was kind of nothing that I thought it was really going to be. When we first got demoed it at Essen, I was like, all right, I really love this. Love this as a concept. I think it's there's got something going there. It's got this lovely cloth map with these hexagonal squares on it, and that represents the island. And you have these hexagonal pieces that are all dry wipe. And unlike a word game like Codenames, you're all playing together as one team. You got one person who's the guide and the other people who are essentially trying to make their way through this island. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to discover where the treasures are, whilst also avoiding traps and curses, and then making their way to the exit. And how you make your way around the island is by the person who's guiding you writing words on these little hexagonal pieces, and then giving them over to the team, and then the team deciding where they go in this map, in this picture of words that you are creating. And where they go is based off of where the team think that word has the greatest amount of association with the other words that are on there. So say, for example, you have the word boat, and then directly below it you have the word football. If you wanted your party to go north along the route where boat is, you'd probably write the word sea, or or water. And they go, right, that goes above boat, and then the person writing carries on writing notes. If you wanted them to go towards football, you probably write goal or something like that.
Yeah.
However, if the added complication is, what if you wanted your team to go to the left or to the right of where boat and football are? You'd need to think of a word that combines the two. So you might pick wave. Thanks. And therefore, they would then put that word in between either of those two words. And that is a sort of essentially how the game was sort of pitched to us. Well, the game was pitched to us just by playing. I think Landmarks is just one of those great games where there is not really much virtue in explaining it, because it really does speak for itself when you just start, when you get it all out, and when you play. And I think the genius behind the game is how it slowly reveals its complexities and its nuance, and actually what it's kind of doing differently to other word games over the course of the play. Because I think that any word game now stands underneath the shadow of Codenames, and that's fine.
Yeah,
like Codenames is just an absolute behemoth. Like,
yes, phenomenal.
It not only had its own stand at Essen, it had its own pretty much area of Essen. Like, it had its own postcode of Essen. It was just, and the money that they've put into the app is obscene, and it's it is a giant of the board game industry, and all credit to Floodgate Games for actually pioneering and creating a word game because, when giants of the industry come along, what tends to happen is most of the rest of the industry kind of goes running. Like there is no other game that is really like Ticket to Ride. There is no other, tile laying game that is really like Carcassonne in a way, and same with Catan. Whereas I think what Floodgate Games has done with Landmarks is really made a word game that, on the face of it, I use the word Codenames just to say it's a word game.
Sure.
And other than that, I kind of feel like there's not much of a comparison to be made between the two.
No, I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? Like, I think that my approach to a board game and whether or not it deserves a space in my collection, because mine is a much smaller collection than yours, and I very much am like one in, one out in terms of genre. Like, I'm really, if it feels too thematically similar, unless it's a theme I really love, it's probably, I'm not going to have two of them. I would say that Landmarks is one of those whereby it can sit nicely alongside something like a Codenames, and you get something different out of both of them. Yes, you're using words as, parts of the mechanics, but ultimately you wouldn't say, oh, well, this game uses dice, therefore I won't have this other one that also uses dice. Like, it definitely feels like they're using them. And again, like, I feel like word games can very often feel very derivative of things like Codenames, Scrabble, Boggle, those sorts of things. It's really easy to fall into that trap. But actually, this one's much more interesting because, it does have that map navigation mechanic, which I think is really cool. And for somebody who loves hex maps because of tabletop role-playing games and the uncovering of such, that is really exciting to see actually play out on that in that space in front of you. I really love that idea. It really does feel like exploration. There are some more mechanics, I think, that they layer on top of it that add just enough to make it feel, again, a little bit more thematic, and also ratchet up the tension. So, like, things like you can accidentally poison yourself and you have to go and find a cure. Sorry, it's a curse, isn't it? A curse. You run out of supplies, so you have to go and find like fresh water, things along those lines, and that you can escape. You can get to the end without completing the level itself. It kind of gives you a little bit of that risk and reward feeling to it. The fact that there's different levels of difficulty, I think, really pushes into it as well. It just, and obviously, all the components are lovely, and all the dry wipe stuff works really nicely, and like the whole thing just works. Like, the whole thing just really works really nicely together. And I think that, like the whilst it does have these little mechanics, these are things that are very easily explainable, as you say, after you've just shown like around. Like, to teach it, you just say like, here is a setup. If we were to go here, I would write this. If we were to go here, I would write that. It's super easy to teach that, and it doesn't involve a lot of math or a lot of strategy in quite that same way, or a lot of thinking of, like, you don't have to think like 10 turns ahead.
For me, I think what got me and what really made me, actually, there's a couple of things that really made me sort of stand up and pay attention. I think the first thing is the strategy behind where you have to guide people in terms of finding the treasure, but also avoiding curses and avoiding pitfalls, because you are limited by how many tiles you've got as a guesser. You start the game with 7 tiles, and that's it. The 7 tiles are all you've got. In the game world, it represents water, so kind of how much provision you have got to be spending exploring this island. If you want to write more clues for your team to guess, you have to pick up water, and then that refills your canteen. You can go again, but there's a a lovely twist in it that you only fill up to what is your maximum water carrying number at that time.
Yeah.
Which can be diminished by landing in traps. But what that means is, if you, and this happened to me, I wrote 2 clues and you guys accidentally put a tile on a water tile. And I have to use it. I had to refill it up, which meant I got 2 tokens back because I'd only used 2 of
which
the
was super
7.
suboptimal, right? Like, not a
which
great...
is not a great move because there's only a limited amount of water that we can get access to on the island. We can't go back to that spot. So picking and choosing when you have to go and find water, when you have to make a detour to go for those things, means that as players on the other side, you are, and this is the second thing that I found really interesting, is how much time you have to spend really getting into the head of what the guide is trying to tell you at any one moment. And that relationship is, for me, was really, really just as a player, and both me and you did both sides of the game. But me as a player, I found that so intriguing because it kind of flips that whole Codenames thing on its head, right? Where Codenames, you play to the crowd. If you are the captain or whatever, you either play to the crowd or you pick on one person who's going to know what it is you're going on about. However, in Landmarks, the game is asking you as a group is to really understand what the guide is trying to get you to do from moment to moment and have full trust and faith in that as a process. And I found that quite liberating, really, as a bit of design, because it just enabled, like, I didn't feel like it was too intrusive that I could hear what you guys were all saying about the clues that I was giving, because that gave me a bit of insight into where I should be going and what I should be doing. And it really enabled me, as someone who was writing the words and the guesses down, just so much more freedom to play with the words I was making, because I was kind of like just having faith in you all that you kind of knew what wavelength I was on, which is builds on that idea of the mind.
I love those. So, I love those, like, feelings of asymmetry of, like, experience across different games. I think for me, I'm always thinking, whenever I'm thinking about games of any kind, I always like to think of the emotional roller coaster, right? I think smarter people than me call them emotion maps, but for me it's a roller coaster, right? Like, you get these highs, you get these lows, and you're doing these different things. So something like a video game of Civilization, for example, the reason it's so addictive is that you're always switching your mindset into doing different things. So it's like, right, okay, start of the turn, right, I've seen where everybody moved, I'm going to move all my units, now I'm going to choose to build a thing, now I'm going to do a society change, now I'm going to do a social policy, now I'm going to do a thing, now I'm going to do some combat, now I'm going to do that, now I'm going to do this, now I'm going to hit go, see all of it play out, next turn, right? And you can see that, like, emotional roller coaster that is, I think, really compelling, and I think a lot of designers kind of miss, or sort of middling designers, I think. With middling games, you often get it. Everything feels very similar all of the time. I think with this one, it was really interesting to see how, as the writer, you're having a very different experience, but you're also from the players, but you're also going through these peaks and troughs, right? You are trying to plan a little bit ahead of where you can go, and you're having this experience of, oh God, I need to think about what the exact perfect words are here. And then you're hoping and like praying and really, really you've got your fingers crossed for your players, like you're listening to your players working it out, and you're like, no, or like, yes, go, but you can't like show that. And then you're also at the same time kind of thinking, and what am I going to put in next? And then they make a choice, and then you go, oh God, I need to change what that is because they've totally got it. And just as the writer, it feels very different, like in different phases. As players, it can feel very, there's again, we built a narrative. We built this narrative of like, oh, we should do this because I think he means that. Oh yeah, that was right last time, therefore that will definitely be right this time. And again, like there was a lot of, because the players who were guessing could speak quite freely. That was again a very different experience. And then there's the heads down for them of like, oh God, what is this meant to be? I think that is like a really lovely feel to all of this. And I think that again, it's that kind of emotional roller coaster really adds a whole ton to the game. That I think again, things like Codenames, I love that game, but like it is a little bit more basic.
Yeah. We were kind of together but apart this weekend.
Yeah.
You were in London.
I was. The big city.
I was in London.
Yep.
But never the twain shall meet.
Well, what did you do?
I played escape rooms that weren't really escape rooms. I went to an escape arcade.
Right. Why would you ever want to escape an arcade? They're the greatest places in the world.
Well, I'll explain more later. I just want you to tell me more about what you were doing.
Fine, I will. As followers of our Instagram will know, at Staying in Pod, I went to Salute, specifically Salute 52. So Salute is a miniatures wargame convention. So think Aircon, think Essen, think UK Games Expo, but specifically for miniatures wargames. This was Salute 52.
So it was a good year.
It was a very, it was not for war. It was actually a bad year for war because it was all pretty much done in the Western Front. In fact, it was definitely all done by that point. It's no pretty much done at all. But 52. So this is I believe the 52nd one that they've done. And the theme this year, and this is important, the theme this year was like the Highlands or Scotland or something along those lines. So, if you go onto our Instagram, you'll see some cool stuff, including some people in kilts having a fight with swords. There was a bagpiper who was playing this incredible tune as we were queuing up at 9 o'clock in the morning to maybe a little bit earlier to get into the convention centre, which was held, by the way, at Excel. Side note, the Excel was playing host to a wedding convention, which seemed fine. Something about like licensing businesses or something like that, which looked very, very boring. A Nintendo Switch 2 pre-order competition winner like special thing where you could go and play the Nintendo Switch 2, which I'm sure was lovely.
Hold on. Were you not thinking of the SEO at this point?
I was thinking about the SEO at this point, and I was thinking, should I try and sneak in? And I did ask the nice Nintendo lady who was on the door and said, "You're not coming in, mate." And I said, "Oh, okay, fine." We weren't allowed in, but you could go in and you could play on the Nintendo Switch 2 and play Mario Kart and all that good stuff. A few weeks earlier, which sounds lovely. There was an international Flesh and Blood competition, the collectible card game, or the whatever it's called now, the trading card game. That was going on as well, and it was properly international. Like people were flying from all over the world to come and play in this thing, which was cool. And then there was Salute, which Salute. What's the best way of describing this? I think the big misconception about Salute is that unlike something like Adepticon, which is very 40k focused, Salute sounds like it's going to be about historical war games. And to be fair, the mix is much more varied, right? So it's not 40k everywhere, like not by a long shot. In fact, the Warhammer's presence is not particularly strongly felt there, simply because Games Workshop don't seem to ever really turn up to these things, or they certainly weren't there for Salute 52, and that's fine, because they've got more than enough of their own events. This is much more companies along the lines of Mantic were there, Foundry were there, which is they're like an old school sculpts place that do Citadel miniatures, which are the old Games Workshop miniatures, but they also do a brand new line of sculpts as well, which are very nice. The Perry twins were there. They are fairly famous in the miniatures wargame scene. They are very good at historical sculpts. So these are things like sculpting somebody who looks like a pikeman from like a Greek hoplite, for example. Right? They're very, very good at that.
Yeah,
the Perry twins. Other folks, what were there included our friends from Osprey, because obviously they have a lot of miniatures war games that are independent, right? Like, so there's the focus here is like independent war games. War Games Atlantic, big focus. Just all of these different places that are, I think PSC with Plastic Soldier Company were there. There's another one as well. Anyway, lots and lots of different things. And it's very independent-y stuff. So it's got that bit of aircon that I really like when you're going around the shopping area. And I will say a lot of this was about shopping. It was kind of definitely more towards the UK Games Expo side of things rather than the aircon you sit and play things.
Yeah, well, I think, the nature of the beast means that you're not really going to be taking along a box of war games and just playing a few.
Let's bang out a few games of, this 6-hour tabletop game. Yeah, it's just not not going to be a thing. So it was very focused on that. There was an RPG contingent as well. I got to meet up with one of my favorite RPG creators, Daniel Sell, who is the creator of Troika. Again, I actually met him at Aircon. It was really lovely to meet him again. And obviously Osprey were there. They also had RPG stuff. So was Free League, who had a presence there as well. They had RPG content. So, and obviously, a bunch of these different places have RPG content. It definitely, first of all, it was massive. Like Aircon, obviously we love Aircon. This thing was like 3 times the size. Like the footprint is like absolutely gigantic. Wow. Like it's huge. And it can actually feel very overwhelming, I would say. Like there was so many people. It is the biggest independent war games show in Europe. Like people come from very far and wide to go to this.
So when you say independent, does that mean that it's not backed specifically by a company?
Exactly. So somebody like Games Workshop has Warhammer Fest, for example. They have that big thing themselves. This is very specifically like independently run. It's actually run. My understanding is it's actually run by a London Wargames group, and that they started it as an event, and then it just sort of got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and it feels like it's sort of got slightly out of control, which is great because it still has that lovely indie spirit to it. So, for example, I'm gonna go out there and say this. And I will stake my claim on it. This is a bold claim.
Go on.
Best goodie bag of any convention, without a shadow.
Okay.
Like, it's a proper old school goodie bag, whereby bunch of flyers for a load of random stuff that you have no idea, but it's got exclusive like discounts to be used at the show. I got like 12 free models, like a bunch of sprue, like a big sprue with a bunch of models on for a game that I was really interested in called Quars War. A 3D printed, really fun little 3D printed thing, a leaflet that I could exchange for another 3D printed model, The salute. So they do every single year. They do a convention miniature. So you can only get it at that event, which is really cool. Free dice, like loads and loads and loads and loads of stuff. And that's just the goodie bag. That is before you even get through the doors. And then after that, everybody who's not Games Workshop basically is there. And even GW has a presence through sellers like Wayland Games and Element Games and those sorts of like big retailers. You could absolutely get Warhammer there, and it was very well pitched. But I think the thing that people misunderstand about things like Salute is it sounds like it's going to be really, really, really about very grognardy, long-bearded people arguing about whether or not this is the right colour green for this army uniform in World War One. And I'm sure there are people like that there, but actually it's not. That's a tiny portion of what's going on at Salute. Stalls ranged from, there were definitely people who were there to like make money, Whaling Games, and then there were people who were there who had booked booths that were just to show off a cool thing that they'd made. So they'd booked out this booth, and they were like, there was like this cool. I didn't manage to get a picture of it in the end, but it was like a battleship, like a full battleship that's like 2 feet long, and it was positioned vertically and then glommed onto this huge purple monstrosity of sculpting that looked like kind of like the ooze from Ghostbusters 2 but darker, and then like skulls like carved into the side, and then there was like, and then next to it there was like like an old 1940s like almost ceramic doll, and then they'd stuffed it to make it look like the sort of, they'd stuffed it full of like corpses, these models of corpses, to like, so it kind of looked like a little bit like this. I know this is a weird reference, but there's like a very famous image of Astro Boy, which it kind of looked like a really grim, dark version of one of those. And like, I went up to the thing and I was like taking photos, and I was like looking around going, well, what are they trying to sell me? And the beautiful thing about it is nothing. They were just excited to show you the cool thing that they'd made, right?
Yeah.
It's got that spirit around it, and it's still accessible enough for independents that people can just go, yeah, I'm just going to book a booth and I'm going to show off this mad thing that I made last year, right? At the same time as being next door to these people who, it's like, no, we have 40 people on our bankroll. We are here to make a profit. Like, this is the shop. You are here to be in the shop. And everything in between. It was really interesting to see, and I mentioned them earlier, Osprey were there. They had a couple of different games. They have a new version of Burrows and Badgers coming out, which is a second edition, which I really love.
Yes.
We've covered that before on the podcast. They have a second edition, and you could get hold of that, which was cool. They had a new game called Harefoot Jousting, which was the second halfling-based jousting game that was at the event. It was very strange. There were two. It's almost like, how you ended up with like Blur and Split Second many years back, of like two racing games that were basically the exact same thing, came out on the same day, that kind of thing. Osprey had Harefoot Jousting, and then there was another one from another manufacturer that was also about halflings on the backs of chickens riding at each other trying to win a tournament. It was great. It was a really, really interesting confluence of things there. I'm really interested in seeing more of that. There was a cool diorama for Lord of the Rings whereby this wizened old man said, hello. He said, do you want to learn more about my diorama? And I said, yes, please. And he said, well, and I sort of bent over to hear him, and he said, well, all of these miniatures are these big, like 52 millimeter, like these big miniatures. And I said, oh, like, where are these from? Oh, well, they were made around the time of the Lord of the Rings movies, but they didn't do particularly well. And then they just didn't really carry them on. And he said, I bought loads of them. And then I decided that I would build my own war game out of them. I was like,
wow.
okay. So like he was just showing us this, and he'd like had to build like a battering ram, and he said, I can't use a real wooden log for this because it was like a battering ram that was like, it was like a huge bit of wood. He said, this is actually plastic because the way I've had to do it is it would have been too heavy. It was wild. It was like ultra professionalism and then ultra indie amateurism and everything in between, and it was just really chaotic and fun. In the way that I think the war games community often actually is to people who know what it's like. Very anarchic, very DIY, very unpolished, but still fun and enjoyable, and about all coming together. Yeah, absolutely amazing. Like I could bang on about Salute for donkey's years, but yeah, really good. So escape rooms. You still 39 years unbeaten?
Still 39 years unbeaten, but this was a new twist, right? This is something that I'd never done before.
Yeah.
In fact, I think the place where we went to do this is the only place in the UK that is set up to do this. This was an escape arcade that I went to.
Right.
It's in Holborn in London. And it's part of a team called Enigma Quest run it.
Yeah, I've heard of them.
Yeah, so they do escape rooms, but the escape arcade is there's only one in the country, and it's in Holborn. And I kind of read about it before booking it, but I kind of didn't, because I was just like, someone said the word escape and I was like, yeah, whatever. And
yeah.
Actually the price was quite reasonable. It was 25 quid each, which is about what you pay for an escape room these days anyway. But but what's different about it is you go into this room and a lovely person greets you, and they ask you to put in your team name and the names of all the people that you're playing with, and it's a bit like when you go to bowling, like you come up with funny nicknames for everyone. It's hilarious. You know what I'm like. And then then they ask you to take a seat, and after a short while someone comes to collect you, and they take you downstairs, and you go down these stairs, and then you meet up with some other lovely people, and they give you a bracelet, or they give the team captain a bracelet. I was team captain. I had the bracelet.
Of course.
And they explain a little bit about just the rules of how the game works. And then you're given an hour and off you go. And you walk down this really long corridor and you get into this underground space. And in this underground space, there are 30 locked rooms. And on the outside of each locked room is either a red light or a green light, and then a title, and then a short description of what is inside that room.
Okay.
And you've got 1 hour to basically score as many points as you can. And you score points by picking a room and going in it, and then you've got 5 minutes to do the challenge that's in that room, and then you leave. And it was like, I have never known an hour of my time to go by as quickly as it did when we were playing these games.
So how like scaled are these things? Like obviously we've done quite a few escape rooms. Like, you know, they're usually timed over an hour themselves, so they're usually really involved. Like, was it as involved?
Yeah.
Are they lighter? Are they easier? Are they like, how does that work?
So you kind of, it's difficult, and I think the one bit of major criticism I would level at Enigma Quest is that it's very unclear when you go into a room what is really going to be expected of you once you've committed to going in it. Like, once you scan your little bracelet on the door and it unlocks, you are committed to being in that room for 5 minutes and trying to get a high score. Some games are very, very obvious what you're going to be doing. So, for example, the first room that we did was called Turn It Off, and all we had to do was flick switches and press buttons and
Okay.
turn dials whenever a light turned on in the room, and there was like hundreds and hundreds of lights and hundreds of switches. So it was a really physically intense game where we were just all like running around the room just turning off lights. And then there was another room that we did where we went in and it showed us a picture of some food and the title of a recipe, and we had to press down on all the foods inside this kitchen to represent all the ingredients that we would put into this recipe. And then once we'd filled in the recipe card, you had to press enter, then it would tell you if it was right or wrong. But it's it was so abstract and subjective that we really felt sort of lost, and really didn't feel like well supported as gamers as you should be. And then then the next room, it was all about throwing little toy footballs at monsters in a kid's room.
Okay.
So the game experiences really fluctuated from really engaging and involved and understandable to somewhere we were just kind of like, for the first couple of minutes, just wandering around, just not really having much of an idea or sense of what we were doing. So I definitely recommend, if this sounds good to you, doing as much research as you can to the kind of rooms that you might like the sounds of before you go, because the hour zooms past. There's 30 rooms. Like, the chances of hitting a dud are unfortunately quite high, but also the chances of getting something that is really exciting and exhilarating is also quite high. And it is the kind of the one big factor against this kind of experience. I kind of did feel like what this needed was a bit of a almost like a bit like a user review sort of element to it, where people were able to say like, yeah, this is a great game, this is not such a good game, or this game, or like before you go into a room, a little 30-second explainer which explains actually what you're meant to be doing, because 5 minutes is not a lot of time at all. However, on the most part, the rooms that we did were really, really fun, and like some really unique stuff that I've never done in any escape room before. And it really had that sort of nostalgic Crystal Mazy vibe to it.
Oh, yeah, of course. I hadn't thought of that.
Where you get the short explainer about what the room is, then you get shoved in there. You get this 5-second countdown, and then you've got to kind of work it out on your own. So we did some. So just for those people who might be interested, some of the rooms that we did, and I apologise, I can't remember the names off the top of my head, but as you walk around, you very quickly, easily pick up the sort of the notions of what some of the rooms are. So we did this one where we walked in, and all the rooms are super atmospheric. Like, the level of design and detail that have gone into every single room is exceptional. Like, the one where we were fighting off aliens in a little small kid's bedroom really felt like we were in a small kid's like bedroom. It's the same level of production design that really went into like the 90s Crystal Maze stuff. We did this one where you walked into what felt like a village street, and there were all these notice boards on there with flyers all stuck to them, and then a message would pop up saying, "Hi, my name's John. I've always loved painting. Is there a painting course near me? I live on this road." And then you've got to look through all these flyers, find one that's flyering for a painting course near him, and then put the number in a phone.
Great, love it.
On the wall
to
see if you got the correct one. That was super good. Love that one. Another great one that we did was one which was set in in an old video shop, like Blockbuster.
Yep.
So you walked in, and along all the walls they had all these DVDs of films, and then one of you has a scanner, and then there's a TV in the corner that starts playing trailers of films, and once the trailer is playing, you've got to guess what the film is. Brilliant. And then scan it, and then you get the next then you get the next one.
These
What are
these
the
feel
names of them?
these feel a little bit like, and I don't want to do a disservice because I don't mean it as disservice, but these feel like the cutting room. These feel like the ideas that are on the cutting room floor, where you go, look, we can't build an entire 1 hour escape room around this idea,
Yeah,
but there's something really good in here.
yeah, absolutely. So we played this one, which was set in a office, and so everyone had a different like cubicle office area, and everyone had a different like computer game that was open at the time. Like one person was playing Minesweeper, one player was just playing a like little platformer, and there was this atrocious. It was so bad. This atrocious implementation of Flappy Bird, and none of us really enjoyed the games at all.
Okay,
but it really felt like you're in an office.
sure.
And there was points in the games where it would stop and say, "Oh, your boss is coming. Go to the fax machine, or go and put the coffee on." And none of us ever stood up to do those things. We just wheeled round the room on our little wheelie office chairs.
Incredible.
Like just like pushing off, like turning the coffee, like answering the phone, and then going back to our computers. And that kind of stuff felt really, really fun.
Awesome.
So I think in every room it kind of had this balance between, you're right, even though some of the stuff did feel like it was a bit come off the cutting room floor, if that was a case and the puzzle wasn't quite as sort of hot as we expected, the production design was so good that it really helped sort of bring everything to life. There's other great rooms in there, like there's one called Snake 2.0, which is basically you walk in and there's just a big Nokia 3210 in there, and between the four of you, you've got to like press the buttons to direct.
Incredible.
So yeah, it was really, really good. I'd love for us all to go to Holborn and to do it. I think 1 hour though is not enough. Again, if someone came up to us at the end and went, right, for a tenner each, do you want to do another 30 minutes? We all would have bit their hands off and gone, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
No worries. Because you're also not in there alone, so you book a slot, but several other teams will have that same slot that you have, with the idea that you would all be doing separate rooms anyway. So sometimes there are specific rooms that you really wanted to do, like we wanted to do one which was like a climbing one. There's another one that's set in a theatre. There's another one which is set on a train, and we all wanted to do those things, but they're all kind of, you'd run past them and the red light would be on. It's like, oh, we're going to do something. We'll come back to that. It's an hour is ages. Don't worry, we can come back to it. And then you come out the room and your time was up. So, an hour isn't long enough. Some of the games aren't great. But you do take your chances, and it's like horses for courses. Like your mileage will vary in terms of what, those games and what you get out of them. But it's just kind of, that kind of thing does feel quite frustrating when your time does feel so limited. However, all in all, it was a really lovely experience, and we all left it going, right, really want to go there again. But yeah, Enigma Quest, if you're in the area in Holborn, it's well worth the journey down. Yeah, not a bad price either.
Here we are again at the end of another episode.
The end of another episode. Just two people again.
I feel like, I feel like we can pat ourselves on the back. We've done a very good job.
We've
delivered the goods.
I think we deliver the goods. I think we've really put the effort in.
Yeah, we have.
This time.
So, just saying, Chris, when you listen to this, I was here. Dan, I was here. Sam was here. Come on. And if you'd like to send passive-aggressive messages to Chris and Dan, stayinginpod@gmail.com is the email address, and I will forward them on for you. You can also find us on Instagram, like I mentioned, at stayinginpod. That's the place that we like to use. It's got nice pictures. And maybe Zuck won't be in charge of it in the near future. So who knows? Who knows what's going on with that?
We don't know.
We don't know. If you are listening to this and you're not subscribed, please do. It really does help us out. And if you can rate and review us on wherever it is that you are, that also, I mean, that doesn't help us out, but it does make us feel all nice in our tums.
Yes, absolutely.
But yeah.
Chris has got his Spotify playlist. Nothing from this week.
No.
We'll go on the Spotify playlist, but that's all right.
Yeah. Gives you time to catch up.
You'll be able to find lots of stuff on there. Yeah. Catch up with it. Come on. The details are in the playlist because otherwise they're a bit of a faff to find. Other curated spaces. We have a space on Steam where we've brought together all the video games that we've talked about, and that goes on there. And also a space on Board Game Geek, which brings together all the board games that we speak about as well. So if you're looking for ideas of stuff to play, of stuff that you think might interest you, then check out those pages as well, because they're cool.
They're as cool as two 39-year-old men saying cool.
Cool.
Do you think is cool? Right. Is cool still a cool word?
Yeah, always has been. Never will not be.
That's cool. Yeah, all right, fine.
Right.
Okay.
Pants optional.